Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first of a planned series that we're having here on UKC. It's a panel debate about training. It's a new idea. It's a concept that we've come up with in response to the current mood because like it or lump it, obviously everybody's very focused on training at the moment, arguably too focused. I mean, we're climbers, we're frustrated, we're stuck in lockdown, but, we want to make the best of it. And so we've got a few titles coming up. The panel's going to consist of myself. I'm Neil Gresham. I'm a climber and coach. I've written articles for UKC. I'm an all-round climber. I've done sort of sport routes and trad routes, ice routes up to a reasonable level. I've also got with me Maddy. She's a coach for Lattice. She's a top level trad climber, climbed E9 and super competent sport climber as well, climbed 8C various times. And we also have with us Louis Parkinson from Catalyst, aka Captain Cutloose. He's a Font 8B boulderer. He does keep his feet on the wall sometimes, and he fronts up Catalyst coaching in down in London. So we're a bit of a mix. We've got different views. We're probably going to contradict each other quite a lot of the time, but then hopefully that will be part of the fun of it, because that's the way it is with training. There's often no kind of one way. It's like lots of different opinions. So we're going to see if we can make some sense of it all. And for this first session we've got coming up, we're going to start just talking a little bit more loosely around the subject of training in lockdown, and in particular, staying motivated in lockdown, which has to be the biggest challenge for reasons that I clearly don't need to spell out. I mean, I just the thing about Louis and Maddy is they're both like high performing athletes as well as coaches. So really we can approach this two ways. I mean, I'm interested to know how it was for you individually as athletes when the news kind of came of the first lockdown. How did you react to that? And equally, we can broaden that out to talk about climbers and clients that you work with. But starting off, from your own personal perspective, how did you take that news, Louis?
I shouldn't be, but initially I was kind of excited for how it might affect my climbing. I love going climbing and improving that way by just practicing a lot. And my entire focus for years has been to become a more efficient technical climber rather than just solely relying on my strength. So that's what I focused on for the last few years. But as we reached lockdown, I was kind of at a point where I thought, actually, I've improved quite a lot. And I have been meaning for a long time to now just knuckle down and do some hardcore actual training on a fingerboard and do some conditioning, do some stretching. And so, initially I was kind of excited because I was like, great, now I've got no excuse, nothing but time. I'm going to address these things that have been outstanding for a while. That's how I felt at first anyway.
Nice. So what about you, Maddy? I mean, was it much the same? Did you have any, I mean, you do a lot of climbing all over. Did you have trips that you needed to cancel? I mean, were there routes you wanted to do? Did you have to adjust your goals or your training plan at all? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I do tend to travel a little bit for climbing, and this year has really stood out for me as a case where I haven't done that at all. And it's like a whole separate issue, but in a way that's been quite a revelation for me in a positive way for, things like the environment and actually just looking way closer to home when it comes to finding routes that I'm really psyched for. So I definitely didn't sort of necessarily lower my expectations or anything like that on my climbing. But yeah, I definitely had to adjust what I saw as my the routes that I wanted to do for the year. And something I did, which actually was quite a nice exercise in the first lockdown, is I bought a UK map, like a massive poster of a UK map. And I was like, right, I am going to sit down and I'm going to do a bit of research and really sort of look in all the nooks and crannies of the UK, all these places that I probably would really love to go to, but almost get overlooked by me because it comes round to booking a holiday and maybe I do book to go to Europe, or I get drawn a bit further afield to potentially Yosemite. So I actually found that a really motivating exercise in itself. And then I, put it up on the wall, and all throughout lockdown, when I was training or whatever I was doing, I felt like I had that as like, yeah, quite like a source of inspiration. And I guess for me, from a more sort of training perspective, I actually think something like lockdown was quite beneficial for me. So like strength is a massive kind of weakness of mine, relative weakness compared to my endurance. And I'm definitely someone who I'm really driven with climbing. I really love it, but I can actually almost love it too much. And I think I can get quite distracted. You know, you think you're on a training plan, but then you want to go climb with your friends at the weekend, you know, all of these things. And as much as that's a really sad aspect about lockdown, that we lose out on that social side of climbing, it also, I think from a training perspective, I really benefited in terms of the gains that I saw.
Cool. Thanks. And I mean, and how would you say it played out? Do you think that were the outcomes like positive for you, Louis, in terms of like, if you could have predicted where your climbing was going to be after lockdown, how did it turn out?
Surprisingly, not so badly for me. Considering that I had kind of put a lot of expectation on, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to do a lot of hangboarding. I'm going to get really strong fingers for the first time. I'm going to be really, really focused on it. And that's what I'm going to do to improve my strength, my fingers, or at least just maintain where I was. That completely fell apart because I quickly remembered I despise hangboarding. So didn't do much hangboarding. And then that also obviously then made me actually quite demoralized at the time, because then I was beating myself up loads going, oh, but this is what you've got. You need to be motivated to do this or your climbing is going to suffer, and you're not motivated to do it. So I started beating myself up mentally. And after a while, I think, Maddy, it's really interesting hearing what you were talking about just then, but that idea of just being accepting of the circumstances and going, okay, I will do my best. That will be my aim. I'm going to train regularly. I'm going to aim to improve in various areas. But we are limited at the moment, and whatever the outcome is, that's okay. I'm accepting of that. I did eventually, though, having sworn blind for the first couple of months, no, there's no room for me to build a home wall anywhere. I'm in a really tiny 1-bedroom flat. I don't know how to build a home wall. I definitely don't have space or resources. After about 2 or 3 months, I finally sort of went, okay, no, I abandoned all that stuff. I said, I'm going to make space and I'm going to find out how to do it, and I'm going to build myself something, because that ended up being something that really saved my motivation and I think a decent amount of my strength and fitness in climbing. Obviously not an option for everybody, and I feel very, very privileged to be able to have built a small home wall. But having that to train on regularly has meant that I've been able to actually climb a decent amount. Maintained a good level of finger strength. The other thing that I've really enjoyed, and not something that I'd ever done before, but I started running loads of live sessions, which was just conditioning workouts with students and things like that. I am not so good at motivating myself to do those workouts under my own steam. So it was actually really, really nice to be accountable to these other people for once, of going, okay, I don't particularly want to do a core workout right now, but there's a bunch of people who are expecting me to show up and do it with them. So, okay, fine, I better go and do it. So I ended up doing loads more conditioning than I've done in the past. And I've also now managed to, I didn't set any, and again, sorry, it rang very true when you were speaking about it, Maddy, the idea of not setting specific goals to do with, I want to do a certain climb or win a certain competition, because as we said, yeah, those goals aren't really appropriate at the moment, because who knows when they're going to come up again. But setting more reasonable goals of either training focused, of I want to be able to do this, or for me, I actually set really, really simple goals of, with stretching, my goal wasn't to do the splits. Secretly, yes, that is what I want to do. But the goal I set myself was, I'm going to get into the habit of stretching regularly. And now I'm really, really happy, because every night I do about an hour's stretching. It now feels normal that I do that. So I've built a few good practices. I suppose my training doesn't look anything much like I originally planned it to when lockdown started, where I was saying, yeah, I'm going to do all this, I'm going to fingerboard loads. But overall, I've done okay. I've maintained a good level of finger strength. I've done more conditioning and stretching than I've ever done before. So I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to do that. But no, didn't turn out how I predicted at all for me. How about you?
Yeah, go on, Maddy.
I'll just say that I think that point that you said there, Louis, about sort of forming a really positive habit and sort of almost like using lockdown as a bit of a blank slate for behavioral change is really interesting. And that really played I think actually for me, a big part in my strength training. And again, it sounds kind of sad because I actually essentially did much more training on my own without the distraction of others. That meant that I was having a bouldering session for 4 hours or something like that. So I think for me, actually, the behavioral change was that I did actually become quite disciplined. And yeah, for me, it played out from my sort of personal experience really well. So maybe I even sort of outdid my expectations a little bit in my training scenario, in the sort of fingerboard gains that I made, and the ability for me to take projects that were on my board at the beginning of the session through to sort of like repeating sessions, through to like adding ankle weights. So yeah, I found that was really motivating, but I was interested when I went back outside, how would this all play out for me? Especially because I am not a boulderer. So in terms of fulfilling the potential of the training I was doing, I kind of knew I was never going to do that because I was training strength and power, which for me is a weakness, but I was never going to go out and go bouldering. So I was interested to see how I would feel on routes. And I did feel, yeah, a lot stronger. I think that quite a lot of other things occurred for me in the year, which I'm sure is the same out there for everyone. You know, we know that not sending anything does not mean that the training wasn't beneficial, because there were still lots of travel restrictions. We have work to, work things around. So in that sense, I probably, a lot of people had that to sort of compete with as well. But one thing that I'd be really interesting, I'm going to pass this over to you, Neil, to see what you think once I've said my bit, is because I know that we both climbed E9 trad routes post-lockdown. So the final round was a route that I had never really thought about trying, if I'm honest. I wasn't hadn't been, drawn to it for years or anything. But because, when I had that map up and I was thinking about local routes that provided a challenge that I find really motivating, that was an E9 sort of route on limestone, a bit longer, not a grit one, which isn't so much my thing. It's quite morpho grit. I like my legs. So I gravitated towards that and tried it, and really noticed, especially my finger strength. And something that was interesting for me here was I was wondering what my head might be like. So with the final round, there is a slight danger element there, because for the initial bit, you might hit the ground if you fall off. And then higher up, actually, it's just a big fall, but it is safe. And something I was quite interested to find is that my head felt quite good, but I'm not sure if it was because my head was in its best trad place. I think it was because I felt stronger on the rock. So I was just more able to feel confident in my physical ability to climb the route. And I guess that's a little bit of a new thing for me. I actually almost slightly class myself as someone who thinks about that mental element of trad climbing from a point of view of staying calm and relaxed and, almost that side of things. Whereas I felt I sort of swung to this other side where I was like, you know what, I feel strong enough and confident that I'm not going to fall off. And I know that you also did a similar trad route, or not similar, different one, but same grade. And so I'm really interested to know how you thought your, training played out in sort of on the real rock when we came out of lockdown.
Well, I mean, I dare say we're similar climbers in respect that you say that strength is the thing that you struggle with most. So give you some extra strength, you're immediately going to be able to do something with it. And I've always been the same. So, I mean, really, I suppose just to go back to that, what the first question was, how did you feel at the start of lockdown? And I mean, crumbs, aside from concern for what was going on in broader society and the more serious consequences of COVID, from my own sort of personal selfish perspective as a climber, I was like, well, it's fine. It doesn't really make any difference. And it's arguably better because I'm going to do some focused strength training. And I sort of knew from the start that I would be able to do something with that. I mean, of course, there are some climbers that you pump them up with more strength and you're going to only exacerbate the problem that they have, which is a big kind of gap between their strength and their technique or their mental skill set. But Maddy, you and I dare say we are at the opposite end of that spectrum. And The other thing for me about lockdown is I again wanted to pick up on another thing you said, Maddy. I wanted to interrupt at the time because I thought it was so pertinent, was that you said about, training on your own. And I think initially a lot of people were going to think, a lot of people don't we just know that, climbing, they're not walls anymore, are they? They're gyms. There are these incredibly sort of sociable places. We're told that they're like the new nightclubs. People go to the climbing gym as much to socialize as they do to train. And suddenly it's like, you got to train on your own now. And a lot of people are like, whoa, how do I do that? I've never done that before, but we go back to like Malcolm Smith, who chose to train on his own. He used to like actively avoid climbing with other people because he found it distracting, and he was very like, and there's a lot of other climbers like Malcolm, who actually choose to train on their own because they do find the climbing wall. It's like, they get influenced by what other people are doing. That's, let's go and try this problem. Let's go and do that route. And often it's harder to do what you're trying to do for yourself in that environment, and also to concentrate on what you're doing when there's banging music and people chatting. And it's like, if I'm just want to sort of have a laugh and enjoy my climbing, I'll go down the wall like the next person. But I dare say, if I'm trying to climb a project, I'm better training on my own. And so I just thought, well, lockdown, this is really just going to help me, if anything, train for my Lakes project final score, because I can work on my strength. I'm going to do it on my own, and, when I got out on the crag, there was something else that was really important to me that I've really noticed over the years, that I feel like you need to sometimes make a sacrifice or like suffer a little bit for your art as a climber. And if you've, gone to the trouble of making yourself train in an adverse situation, there's going to be some payback there, like perhaps greater than the payback that you would have had if it had all just been fun and easy and you'd been at the wall. And so when I got out on Iron Crag to try my new line there, I was just like, well, this year's been exceptional. It's been adverse. And therefore I feel almost entitled to expect exceptional results, like kind of almost, I don't know, it's like flipping the negative or something like that. But I felt a stronger surge of motivation and confidence in my climbing than I think I've ever felt. And I put that pretty much down to what went on in lockdown and afterwards. But yeah, that was certainly my experience of it. And it just feels good, doesn't it? You put the time in and you get the results. But the thing is, obviously we're talking about relatively high-end stuff. And, Louis and Maddy, I dare say I know, Louis, that you've had the same experiences as me with clients that you work with. And I'm sure, Maddy, much the same, is that this phenomenon that we're describing has trickled down through intermediate climbers to, climbers of all levels, ages, shapes and sizes, preferences. A lot of people said the same. They were like, we came out of lockdown and we crushed it. We weren't expecting to. We were expecting not to know what to do with our feet. We were expecting to be really scared when we moved above our gear. But actually we went out and we just hit a load of PBs. Is that, again, Louis, was that your take on it as a coach?
Yeah, I'd say it varied a lot depending on student and the circumstances they're in. As we talked about already, I think the motivation that we have is somewhat dependent on the facilities we have available. As I said earlier, I was a lot more motivated once I had the facility of a home wall that I could do some more exciting training on. So obviously, I think the motivation level of people who lived in a small flat, aren't able to go outside much, and maybe live in rented property and can't even put up a hangboard, difficult, because it feels really hard to engage with the stuff they want to do, even if they were motivated. But for a lot of people, I think they found, this is actually the first time where I have time and spare energy to put towards training. And so for a large number of people, I think it was the first time they'd maybe ever done any kind of training. They maybe had not really loved the idea of doing fingerboarding before, or maybe thought they weren't ready for it, or, as I had said about the home wall, kind of said, no, there's no space for this, I can't do this. But when things got a bit more serious, I think quite a number of people went, okay, I'm going to work stuff out with my landlord and put up a fingerboard because I really want to do this now. And so, yeah, for all the people who had not really done any training before and had maybe only gone climbing a couple of times a week, who then in lockdown realized, no, climbing is a big passion of mine. I do want to commit to a bit of training, and then did loads of fingerboarding and conditioning for the first time ever. Then, yeah, of course, we then get back to the walls being open and they're strong as hell because they've done a load of training for the first time. Not for everybody, because as we say, yeah, it's not so easy for everyone, even if we do have the facilities to stay motivated. But yeah, I don't know if I know many students who got better at climbing, because that's a tricky one. But stronger, yes, lots of people.
And so what about you, Maddy? Was it much the same for some of the climbers that you've been working with?
Yeah, quite similar actually. And I just sort of want to do a little loop back to what you said about, when you got outside and you really felt like quite a sense of sort of purpose and like quite a strong will to succeed outdoors. And I think I did see that a lot and I felt it myself. And I think, when we have something taken away from us and then you get it back, there's a really great appreciation for it. And I think that for a lot of people that I work with, friends as well as me included, I think that put people for the most part in quite a positive mindset. You're not taking it for granted. So yeah, I think that was a big part of it. And something that I saw a lot with the people that I work with, we are talking about motivation, and as Louis experienced himself, like maybe the facilities you have play a really big part in that. And so I think what I tried to do with people and found quite a positive response from is you almost make it into more of a challenge or a game, that way of finding how you can maintain the training that you want to do at home and try and get really creative with it. Especially, say something like fingerboarding. I know a lot of people can't put one up, but can you get some wood and almost do an overcoming isometric with it hooked under your feet, sort of like pulling against the immovable edge that is held down by your feet. And there's all these ways, and I think this ultimately starts to boil down a little bit to how you frame the situation. And I think we talk about the idea of reframing in lots of scenarios, but it's this idea that you can't control what you're being given. I actually heard an analogy the other day, which I thought was quite nice. So you like work in an art gallery and you can't control the pieces of art that you're given, but you can control what frame you put them in and how nice you make them look on the wall. And so I think really trying to work with people to find that positive framing for them, whatever their scenario is. And I think Louis makes a really important point, which I think a lot of people that I work with really benefited from, is that no matter the level, and really whether it's even if strength isn't something you need to work on, as climbers, we are always spinning all these plates of trying to climb often and add in these exercises. And I think for people starting out training, this was actually quite a good opportunity to get to grips with these training exercises without climbing on top of it. Because, I'm sure we'll come on to talk about injury and risk of home training. But for me, I think tied up in injury is often just overdoing it. And you don't, and I think just having your home training gave you this opportunity to really get to grips with the fingerboard, hanging on it, conditioning exercises without that additional load of actually being able to go climbing. So I think that was a really positive outcome for a lot of people I worked with. And it was just finding those things that they could do in their home. Maybe for some people, like movement is something, learning new moves is something they really missed from climbing. Was there a novel movement they wanted to learn, like with all the calisthenics out there and all this stuff. So I think that reframing of the situation and really finding for any individual what was that positive spin you could put on it was really important. And I think, had really good sort of outcome for that. And I think something like a silver lining for quite a few people, and it might be similar for you guys, was that reduction in sort of everything else in life. Like some people, they were furloughed or they weren't commuting anymore and they didn't have to get up at 6 a.m. to do their commute. And you actually, I think energy level wise, people had quite a good amount of energy to give to it. And on the flip side, it made them understand the sort of the load, we call it allostatic load, that all those things in life add. So when you go back into training, you're actually slightly better equipped with an understanding of what feeling recovered feels like and what overdoing it feels like, what a stressful day at work adds, what your commute adds. So I think that that was like a real positive way to frame the lockdown as well. And then just one more thing I found with people at the start of lockdown, which you guys might have chatted to people that you work with about as well. You know, people are like, oh, you know, what about books and things to watch, you know, to get that kind of climbing fix. For some people, that was really positive. But what I think was really important was for people to reflect on whether that was good for them or not. You know, social media, was it good for them to be looking at social media and what everyone else was doing? Like someone with a home board, do they look at that home board and feel quite motivated and just enjoying seeing someone try hard? Or did they look at it and actually feel frustrated that they didn't have a home board and sort of, you know, make them feel more negative about what they had? Was it good for them to watch climbing films, or did it just make them miss climbing more? And I think that's just something it's really, really individual. And yeah, it's just having, you know, I think what's really nice about working with someone is that you have that pathway of conversation to sort of, just like throw all these ideas out with, and you have someone to be a little bit more objective about your experience. So yeah, I think those were maybe some of the main things, slightly training aside, that I found were quite positive working with people.
Okay, so I think you've really raised something there, Maddy. I'm going to put that to Louis, because you're someone who has a bit of experience with the online community. I mean, did you find that again, there was a mixed response to all the various sort of stimuli that we receive online? You know, some people reacting well to it, some people struggling with it a bit more.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I know it affected me as an athlete as well, but I would see, and this is the pitfall of social media, is obviously it's true that sometimes people post the negative stuff, but on the whole, people post the stuff that makes them happy and makes them look good and presents them well. And so obviously then that means that all of us are hit with a barrage of, whoa, everyone is training so hard and is so uniformly motivated and is getting so much stronger. And so, yeah, I looked at that, and every time I was like, also obviously without realizing, I was like, I didn't even know I was contributing to this as well, but I was trying to reflect what I saw. So I would stuff as well, going, yeah, I'm so motivated, I'm doing all the training, I'm getting so strong. When in reality, no, I was struggling with motivation a little bit, and seeing other posts would put me off a little bit as well. What helped me loads is just talking to more people and realizing actually everyone was in the same boat as me, and is always presenting their best face of how much training they're doing. But no, everyone is struggling in different ways. Everyone is finding motivation a little bit harder to come by. There are some people who are training really hard and getting really strong. And I think I've learned to, as I'm trying to pass on to other people, to take inspiration from things that I can find inspiring, and learn to back off when I'm finding it, no, this is just demotivating and annoying me now. So I'm just not going to look at this, or I'm only going to choose to engage with it in a certain way. But yeah, it's definitely been a challenge.
I think what we saw quite a lot of as well was people saying, you know, what's the best way to do this? What's the best fingerboard routine? What's the best, you know? And it's like, I think a lot of people were really having to get to grips with the concept for the first time, that there is no best way, there is no one way. This is something that you know, if you're lucky enough to have a coach to help you find what's right for you, then great. But otherwise, this is something that you've got to find for yourself. But I think more important and more pertinent than that is that you know, you may even if what you come up with isn't the best possible routine for you at the time, and even if your coach doesn't set the best possible routine for you at the time, it really doesn't matter, because when you then get out onto the crag, or, you know, back onto the walls, or whatever it is you want to do, this thing that you've been sort of almost obsessing about in lockdown and really almost like over analyzing, it doesn't matter anymore. You know, you just got to get on with it and climb, like free your mind. And I've got to say, honestly, in like, you know, over 30 years of climbing, there's only one route I've ever done where I felt perfectly prepared, where I can honestly say that my training campaign for the 6 months running up to that route was totally bulletproof. Nearly always, when you get to the bottom of the route that you want to do, you're thinking, I didn't do enough strength work. Oh, I didn't do enough endurance work. Oh, this phase was too long, or this phase was too short. And of course, what we know is when you're in a performance situation, you often tend to like really overinflate the negatives. And I just think with lockdown, you had to just throw all that out of court, because it didn't matter how well you nailed your fingerboarding program or your supportive conditioning program or your flexibility program. The fact is, you weren't going to have done any climbing for 6 weeks. So inherently your preparation was not going to be perfect. So the challenge was to go out of lockdown, go on the crag and go, doesn't matter, and this is the kind of the strange paradox here, is that I'm not saying don't bother about your training, don't take it seriously. Of course you're going to want to try and do the best possible routine, but then after that you've got to move on from it. And I think it was really ultimately the climbers who were able to do that were the ones that did well. I'd like to now move on to talk about, I think there was another concern at the start of lockdown. I think a lot of people were worried about getting injured because, obviously obvious, physical consequences of that. But I think very quickly people were even more aware of the sort of mental health consequences. It was like, oh my word, the only thing we've got, all right, fingerboarding's not as fun as climbing, but my goodness, it's a lot better than doing nothing. And I've certainly found in coaching over the years, a lot of people are very wary of fingerboards. Fingerboards are often wrongly kind of demonized as things that are going to, don't use a fingerboard, you'll get injured. People hear that type of chatter a lot. A lot of beginners are thinking, I've been told that I shouldn't fingerboard, I'm a beginner. A lot of people are very wary of getting started. But I found that overall people didn't get, of course there were injuries in lockdown, but on the whole, people got on a lot better in that respect. I had a few contacts at the start, people sort of going, I just exploded off the blocks, I've overdone it, I've got this tweak, what do I do? But those who just resisted that temptation to just go too far, to push it too far at the start, generally kind of got through quite well and were quite surprised. Was that your take on it, Louis or Maddy, whichever who wants to go first? I don't mind.
Yeah, I'll go for that. I think you're actually really right there, and I actually always find it quite interesting, the ideas that people have about risk and training and different exercises. Campusing's really risky, fingerboarding's really risky, and or board climbing. And I actually am with you, Neil. I think as long as it's done correctly and you go for quite a gradual loading approach and you prepare your body before the exercise, I don't think that it is very inherently risky in itself when it comes to injury. And I've sort of touched on this already, but I guess I actually would say probably in general, less injuries. And that is because we don't go for that one more rep on the fingerboard, really. We tend to do our session and call it a day. But what we do when we're climbing is, we really want to get to the top. Climbing is our sport. This is what we're training for. So climbing is often where we really push ourselves. And I think what I personally find as well, and I know that others do as well, is that enjoyment and how motivated you are for it can often really mask your level of fatigue and slightly sort of cloud your judgment when it comes to like how many attempts you've had at that boulder problem, how many hours you've been at the climbing wall, how many days on you've had climbing. So yeah, in general, I think that actually the element that is usually the place where people get injured is taken away. So I'm not saying that when people are doing a thorough training plan with climbing and fingerboarding, that the fingerboarding can't contribute. They might have fingerboarded and then gone on a board, and they might have injured a finger. And obviously in that scenario, potentially the fingerboard played into that. But yeah, in general, I think people were probably a lot smarter with their training and a lot more targeted. So rather than fatiguing the body as a whole, we were fatiguing most likely quite specific areas of it. And because something that I definitely found in lockdown, and I know that a lot of people did too, when I came to chatting with people about how they arranged their week, with their different training, because of the number of training exercises you were doing and just the nature of the training, you also tend to spread it out in a way that you're not stressing the same thing, day after day after day, or even 2 days in a row, because of the targeted nature of the training. Whereas when we're climbing as well, we might fingerboard one day and then we'll go climbing the next day, or we might do fingerboard and core, go climbing, our core's a bit tired, fingers a bit tired, our feet slip off and we injure a finger. And I feel like there was far less of that scenario going on. So I think that was really good. And I think someone's maybe touched on it, the amount of time that you had to dedicate to all those things that we know we should do and we often don't to keep our bodies healthy. And that is like all the antagonist work, maybe some stretching, maybe some yoga, things like that. Also, potentially to a minor degree, I know that a few people I talk to who often do, this is not anyone I work with, these are other people, do like dieting for projects or peak seasons, or potentially sit in that camp of wanting to use a little bit of weight loss as a performance enhancement. There was probably no point in doing that. So I know a few people that probably ate a little bit more, relaxed a little bit on their diets, and probably benefited from that in making muscle gains, strength gains, feeling more energetic, feeling more robust. And I guess I hope, that maybe could show people, that other side of the coin when it comes to that element.
I'm super glad. I mean, Louis, do you want to just add in a little bit? Because I don't think we actually had that on the list to discuss, because it often is a bit of a loaded gun.
Let's talk about it in a minute. But
so what about you, Louis? Did you notice much the same thing? People perhaps getting on better than they expected with regards to avoiding injury?
Yeah, it's really interesting hearing you both talk about it, because actually I think I would have been guilty as one of the people who might have demonized fingerboards and the rate of injury that might be associated with them because I picked it up from coaches who were around me when I was younger, that if I'd ask about the fingerboard, almost always by staff or by coaches, I was told, whoa, careful, it's really dangerous, it's really intense, you can hurt your fingers. And so I always kind of had that view myself. And now it's actually really liberating to analyze that opinion again and realize, I don't know if that's 100% right, actually, because, as you guys are saying, the vast amount of injuries that occur in the climbing center do not occur on the fingerboard. They occur when climbing, either from people injuring themselves, as you're saying, Maddy, maybe they're tired from other training and they just have their feet slip on a movement or injure a finger, or probably the most common injury of all, they just fall off and sprain an ankle. As for how many injuries occur on the fingerboard, I think it's pretty rare that someone who is experienced in using a fingerboard, doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing according to their plan, spontaneously acquires an injury. It's much more likely that any injuries we get from the fingerboard are, as we've said, a case of going way hard too fast, or just doing a bit too much, or not really knowing how to warm up properly, but very commonly to do with not the implicit use of, the actual use of a fingerboard causing an injury, but maybe slightly improper use of it. So I think, as you're saying, it's then really nice for people in lockdown to have a bit more of an opportunity to explore that a bit more. For me, it's been really nice to be able to recommend some really light fingerboarding to people, because I think a lot of people have asked, probably you guys, a similar sort of question of, I really want to do something to improve my climbing. I really want to get stronger hands, but you've probably heard word for word for this, maybe something like, I only climbed for about 3 months before lockdown. Everything I've learned tells me I'm not ready at all to hop onto the fingerboard. So, what can I do? So I've initially agreed, saying, 100%, don't just hang all your weight from tiny edges like you've seen everyone else doing. No, maybe not ready for that. But the idea of maybe getting a portable fingerboard and a small set of weights, that can be completely accessible for a lot of people. And is then a really, really nice, measurable, safe way of slowly improving their finger strength and working on stuff. And again, as you say, Maddy, there's I think it would be unfair to say that climbing is an unhealthy sport. I don't think that's true at all. But I don't think it would be unreasonable for me to say that, and this is something that I'm slightly guilty of, doing nothing else but this for hours and hours and hours per day is not the healthiest thing to do, especially if you're not using some other time to balance it by doing loads and loads of conditioning, loads of stretching. So for a lot of people, myself included, lockdown's been that opportunity to address these much needed areas and then to come back to climbing going, oh, this is what healthy and well-rested feels like. Right, great, I hadn't realized. So yeah, overall, I've found injury rates not that high. Yeah, I think we were all worried going, oh, this is going to be carnage. Everyone's going to get on the fingerboards for the first time. It's like all going to do way too much because no one else has anything to do. But generally, everyone's been really smart about it. And no, not so bad on injuries.
Whilst we're just on injuries, there was something I saw to a small degree, and it'd be interesting to know if you guys experienced this at all. And that was actually not injuries during lockdown, but going back to climbing, home training, as we've said, is like, it's really targeted. We are generally working in quite like a limited range of motion, angles of arms, angles of fingers, which is what makes us think it could make us injury prone, right? Because it's like that sort of classic overuse side of things. But I think because people weren't doing climbing or anything else, probably if they felt a little bit niggly, they probably pulled back, so actually I think that the feeling that goes with your training was very easy to monitor without climbing. But when people went back to climbing, a little bit of what I saw, not so much from maybe people who are working with a coach, but people who have, from a self-directed point of view, have started doing some training, using some exercises. They then started climbing and maintained everything they've been doing. And so then you get obviously a bit of a spike in load there. One, from the point of view that the training load climbing has just been added, but they were so psyched to maintain everything they'd built that I think for some people, there was a bit of a misjudgment when it came to realigning that training load and thinking about your recovery. Another element that I actually only saw one case of this was an elbow issue going back to climbing, essentially having developed quite a lot of strength, being new to fingerboarding, developed quite a lot of strength quite relatively quickly in one range of motion, and then going back, I think it might have been an undercut to a much broader range of motion with this newfound strength in a more limited range, if you know what I mean, and you're suddenly applying it to all these different movements. So I did try to say, obviously we all tried to say to anyone we work with, ease back into your outdoor climbing, because although you've gotten much stronger in these sets of exercises, climbing is way more complex than that. And we want to wait for our body to get recoordinated to make sure we're weighting our feet. So yeah, that's sort of one thing that I did see. And then one other thing was just the rate of progression some people saw was really quite impressive. And on that, I would just say, as I would say to anyone, if people are watching this during this lockdown, they've started fingerboarding and their scores are just going, they keep pushing the weight because they're that type of person that just adapts really well. Just slow that progression down, forcibly slow it down. Don't keep pushing it, because ultimately I think that is where the injuries come from, either potentially within the training or going back to climbing, because you've suddenly got this massive fingerboard score that you didn't have before, and then you go back to climbing. So it'd be interesting to know if you guys saw any of that.
Well, I think that's such a good point. And I think most people feel that training has to be pushed forward in waves. You'll do a surge with something like fingerboarding, but you just can't keep on forcing that, or something's got to give. And one would hope that the way it naturally panned out was that we all did fingerboarding in the first lockdown. Then we went out on the crag or back to the climbing gym and hopefully did something with our newfound strength. But maybe it wasn't quite as an intense, that one way, very specific type of loading that Maddy's talking about. We mixed it up and we did some climbing. That was then. And now we're going into another lockdown. Logic dictates that this is actually probably a pretty good time to start pushing the hangboarding. But that's only if your climbing is on that kind of curve and on that pattern. And as Maddy quite rightly says, if you were hammering fingerboarding for the last 2 months, don't keep hammering it now. You've got to drop it back. you know, or something will give. But I want to just rewind quite a long way back to something that Maddy said, which I thought was absolutely golden, and I really want to just make sure we do this topic. We're never going to do it comprehensively, but see if there's anything more to say. I had quite a few clients saying to me, you know, I'm eating too much in lockdown. You know, no surprise. I'm sat around. I'm comfort eating, and I'm worrying about it. And I think maybe some of them were looking to me to say, you know, to sort of crack the whip and go, oh, you know, no, you've got to be tough on yourself. And I was like the opposite. I was like, this is a situation that it's an unprecedented situation. There's a whole load of stresses, social stresses, financial stresses. You don't want to just like add another thing to stick another form of stress on the tab, which is like your diet. And as Maddy said, you know, the client you were referring to actually ended up getting stronger, getting a bit of extra recovery as a result of probably eating quite well, you know, and you just got to try and do your best to feel relaxed, because you're going to respond better to climbing and training if you just feel relaxed. And I think that, you know, coming back to the waves analogy again, I don't think I know a few climbers who follow a tough diet all year round, but I mean, they're machines, you know, they're robots. Like the vast majority find that the logical time to start, you know, toughening up a little bit with the nutrition, let's say, is when, you know, the weather's improving, crags are drying out. More to the point, we can get on the crags. You know, in the heart of winter, in the depths of lockdown, this doesn't really sound like, to me, the sort of time where you should be, you know, getting overly concerned about your nutrition and just adhering to some basic principles, you know, making sure there's a bit of balance there, you're getting your protein there for recovery, but not perhaps overthinking it too much. I don't know, but of course, don't we just know nutrition's a very personal, so that's my take on it as a coach. And if, you know, if Maddy or Louis, if you've got anything to add on that subject, but just because I know it is something that people think about in lockdown, and it ties in with motivation, which is what we're supposed to be talking about here.
I'll happily add a little bit of personal experience there, because for sure it's something that, you know, I mean, it was plastered over all our headlines, you know, the weight gain of the general population, which climbers are not, but yeah, I feel like it was also slightly being shoved down our throats, the weight gain of the population at whole. So that potentially also feeds into the, I guess, anxiety that some climbers do have around the issue, you know, going maybe from anxiety through to just like overthinking. And I think it does really, I think even when people use it for, you know, that few extra percent when they're heading for like a peak performance, it can still, I know from climbers I've spoken to, it still drains on motivation. So yeah, everyone I spoke to about it, I do think it was a time that when motivation might be hard to come by anyway. I think that just eating well and trying not to worry about that is the way forward. But that obviously can be hard. You know, if someone just says that to you, that doesn't ultimately change your ideas about it and how worried you are about it. So like personally, I'd often try and share where I was, because, you know, I think that helps people relate to something. And I think I gained like at least 2, it was almost 3 kilos. And I was like strength training, and, you know, I put on muscle, my like scores went up. And what I found, and what a lot of people said to me, was actually coming out the other side of lockdown. I think most people I spoke with got pretty on board with the fact that they didn't really need to maybe worry about it right now. But then there's the question, when lockdown ended, it's like, should I start dieting now? And I guess what I found and what I tried to sort of relay is that let's just see where you naturally come down to. I think people, climbers, anyone, I think sometimes we can be controlling. We really think about our sport a lot. And I think it was a good test to just trust your body in what it would do. So as you start becoming more active when lockdown ends, I guess it's like, let's see what naturally just comes off. And I guess this was what I found. And in my experience, it is what most people found, that over the course of the summer when they could go out again, no, don't just suddenly start dieting, because you've done all this hard training and hard work and it's really paid off and you're feeling good. And now you can go outside. Like, don't change too many things at once. Let's see, as you start going outside and you can go outside more and be more active, let's see where naturally you actually sit. And if that's not changed for any climber, or they are wanting a very peak performance, sort of 6 weeks post lockdown, then potentially there's an evaluation of nutrition there. But I guess what I found mostly was that our bodies quite naturally adapt, our metabolism with what we eat and what we do, and a little bit of trust there, not rushing into things and being willing to wait. Maybe lockdown showed us this, being willing to wait, 4 to 6 weeks to just see what occurs before feeling like we have to implement some intervention. I guess that's my personal take on it.
Cool. Thanks, Maddy. And what about you?
I learned how to make banana muffins in lockdown, so that obviously didn't work for nutrition. But no, I'm very lucky that I think I have a decent metabolism, and I personally haven't had to focus so much on my own nutrition with climbing. But my general take on it, I think, is that one of the many things I love about climbing is there are so many different ways to improve our performance as climbers, which is awesome, because there's loads of things that we can do to improve ourselves. But one thing which I think is really, really good to acknowledge is that all of these things that we do to improve ourselves take motivation and take energy and are demanding and can be really hard work. So seeing as there is a plethora of things that you can do to improve, and they'll all take different amounts of energy and motivation, I think it's quite wise to work out that you might want to pick your battles quite wisely and not necessarily choose all of the battles at once, because to do so, a professional climber aggressively manages all of those different variables. And I think it would be reasonable to say that it is a very demanding full-time job to do all of those things. So for everyone to assume that, to be the best climber I can be, I'm not doing myself justice if I don't do all of these different things, I think is beyond unreasonable. I think, by all means, pick your battles and be smart about which ones you want to fight to improve as a climber, but don't beat yourself up about not picking all of them. So, to be clear, nutrition is not a battle I've chosen to pick. I'm focusing really hard on a lot of other stuff, but I'm also allowing myself to eat freely. If I noticed that I was gaining huge amounts of weight, then maybe I'd start thinking about it. But a little bit of weight gain here or there, no, that's okay. It's to be expected with what's going on, I think.
I was going to make a joke about Captain Cutloose and say it's his age and say, can we get him back on when he's nearly 50 and see if he says the same thing? But
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, I think because we've talked quite a bit about the sort of targeted nature of home training, and what I found myself, and I think it's maybe showed quite a lot of people, is that when we think about that whole strength to weight ratio, you've got to think about the magnitude of room to grow in those two areas. So say I gained 2 kilos and I could obviously lose 2 kilos, say I put a lot more than that on during the course of lockdown on my finger strength scores and on my pull-ups, so there's, I think maybe with people have had that chance to do some quite structured, targeted training exercises, with that quite measurable outcome. I think when you do see that measurable outcome and you compare it to the potential you have to sort of gain performance from a shift of weight, I think that really showed me, and potentially would show others, when I weigh these two things up, maybe it's worth putting more energy into the strength training, because there's so much room to grow in that area. And let's face it, none of us, some people potentially have a bit more room to move than others when it comes to weight. But, that's going to be a much more sort of restricted adaptation that we've got there.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Okay, well, I mean, this has been we've navigated sort of and moved around in a whole variety of different areas. It's been super interesting, but I mean, bringing things perhaps in the direction of a conclusion, perhaps between the three of us, we can see if we can thrash this out. If we could shortlist some guidance for people right here and now, what we've learned mainly as a result of being in the first lockdown, but then also in terms of how that translated to what happened afterwards on, at the walls and at the crags. What would be the key points of our advice to people out there who just want to, obviously A, get the best out of their lockdown training, but B, have a good time, not get too stressed, just get themselves through lockdown the best way they can. Go on, Louis, you can kick it off.
I suppose I'd also just like to reiterate something that we've said earlier in the chat, that if you're, I suppose, paralyzed by choice of how many different things you could do for training and worried about, which one is the most effective, I want to make sure I'm doing the absolute best. Generally, I'd just say, do something. It's better than nothing. So don't hold off. Start doing a little bit. But one thing that I learned quite quickly is I'd say don't try and take on too much too quickly. Because by all sets, exciting goals where you want to try hard and push yourself. But I found it quite demoralizing to set myself a really big target of, I'm going to do all of this every day. And so I did it all on day one, then woke up on day two feeling all tired, didn't get through all the stuff I planned, and then felt really demoralized that I wasn't matching up to the stuff I'd planned. So much better approach would be to start small and start building from there. And then the only other advice I'd give is that, and this is something I learned about myself in terms of my own motivation and my mental well-being. I think a lot of us are like this, that we, certainly I am, I enjoy being productive and I enjoy being busy, and I like going and doing things and feeling like I've achieved things with my day. And so, when before lockdown, when I was going out all the time and I was climbing and I was coaching people and I was seeing them improve and I was having all these interactions where I could see people benefiting, and that made me feel really productive. I could tell I was doing things that made me feel good about myself. It was then easier to be motivated. I found it hard to be so productive in lockdown because there isn't as much to do. So I'm talking big circular route, but basically saying that my advice would be specifically take time to do things which aren't necessarily productive for anything other than making you feel good and happy. Because I think it's then I felt some kind of responsibility to always be doing something that was productive and was making me better, and it's tiring and it's hard work. And so I've now learned that it's okay to step back and just go, I'm just going to do something that recharges me a little bit so that I have more motivation to give later.
Now go for a walk, read a book, and don't.
Yeah, exactly, man.
Whatever it might be. Thanks, Louis. And what about you, Maddy? Just two or three of your, if you like, biggest truths or silver bullets or take homes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll go for, I think Louis made some really good points there. So I'll try to think of a few different ones. And something I think is really interesting is finding something that is going to help your climbing. I guess for me personally and for people I work with, we're talking about motivation, and I think you feel motivated when you're invested in this thing that is something that is going to pay off for you. I guess that's what we want. And so it's finding what are those things you need. Like I know Louis said, don't get paralyzed, which I completely agree with, and don't try and do everything. So I guess it's for people maybe finding some way, whatever way resonates with them, to highlight either their weaknesses, or actually maybe you have a style that you climb on and it plays to your strengths, but that's what you want to climb on. So work your strengths and work on those, maybe quite specific exercises for your climbing. And there might be different ways where you benchmark, and there's I think different methods resonate with different people, but you could use a coach, or you could use testing scores, or maybe ask your friends, what do they think you need to work on? People who watch you climb a lot. Some people I know have maybe footage of them trying a project. That's really cool because you can watch it and what movements are you struggling with? What muscle groups are that? So I guess we're coming into lockdown 2 and maybe lockdown 1, people got to grips with some basic exercises, and then it's we're here again. And I do feel like we need a little bit more of an injection of sight. Plus on the sort of lines of injection, there is a vaccine coming, so also hopefully this might be the last mega lockdown we're in, and we will be back out on the crags soon. So I guess for me, I'm actually going to say I think it's a danger to go too specific, but maybe find something that for you really motivates you and will translate to your climbing, and maybe set a training goal in that area. Because I think for a lot of people that can be really motivating. So if it's like you've worked on a really good base of finger strength in the first lockdown, and you are, a pretty sort of, well experienced climber, and you're now hoping in the spring to go out on limestone, which has quite small edges, maybe you start to add a bit of specific training in there with a slightly smaller edge size. And yeah, I guess setting then some training goals around that area, or just getting that specificity in a slightly more novel way than people did in the first lockdown. I think that's really motivating, and it really gives us a way to build upon what we learned in the first lockdown. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the main things. And then the second one, a bit more along the lines of motivation, is making sure you do some things you enjoy. Like maybe what I just said, if those things you don't necessarily enjoy, then also make sure you throw in something that you actually just found really fun, whether it is just something outside, or whether it is actually just a training exercise that you don't need to do. The thing that people say to you, like, you don't need to work on that, it's so good. If you really enjoy it, then keep on doing some of that. That is fine as well. We don't all have to hit our head against the wall with an exercise that we don't like. And then the other thing I found really useful, sort of, that's like the training side of things, I guess, which is what we've been talking about, is like keeping a diary or some sort of way of monitoring. So I'm really bad at this, but something I really noticed when it came to motivation and I guess well-being within a lockdown where every day can feel the same, I think our sense of time and the passing of time has quite a close link with our happiness and well-being. And so I think really it sort of plays into a bit what Louis said, I think, with the productivity idea of trying to distinguish your days. So like, I know some people might it might feel like a really easy way to set it up to be like, Monday I do this, Tuesday I do this, Wednesday I do this. But let's face it, we all have, well, most of us, if we don't have children that we're homeschooling or anything like that, if we're quite, free in our schedule, maybe mix it up a bit, and keep a diary, monitor your progress. But it also gives you something to look back on and think, this was what I did this week, and every day was not the same. I think that sort of reflective tool is quite nice for seeing how far you're progressing, how your training's going, keeping an eye on that, and that's motivating. But also from a more general perspective, you can put other things in your day in that, walk you went on, or maybe you listen to a really funny podcast and you can write about that, and it's just that general tool to give you a good sense of your time during the lockdown.
That's fantastic. I mean, I feel you guys have pretty much nailed it. I wouldn't want to add too much to that. The only thing I would say is if you did feel like you hit a bit of a winning formula in the first lockdown and you saw some mega gains, you might actually be noticing it's not working for you this time round and wondering why. And in some cases, the reason for that is purely just because it's the same formula and you need to change it. And so sometimes you have to change things just for the sake of it. And I know that, we've spoken a lot, the three of us, about how we often find it easier to meddle with other people's training than sort out our own training. And I mean, crumbs, the times when I've been coached, I've found one of the most useful things is having a coach to go, no, change it now, do something different, because otherwise I'll hang on to that routine and cherish it because it's been working historically, but you don't see the bigger picture and realize that it's actually not perhaps doing so well for you now. But of course, the real strength isn't just changing it any old how. It's like, feeding into what Maddy was saying about really identifying something and then changing it in a way that really kind of targets that thing that you've identified. If you can do it like that, then you clearly are going to win. But I mean, really just also back to what Louis was saying about don't set your sights too high in terms of volume. Just, if anything, set them a little bit lower, plan to do a bit less. And then when you do a little bit more, you'll be really pleased with yourself. Okay, I mean, I think it's been a really interesting discussion, and thanks so much to you guys, and also for UKC for laying this on. I mean, it's been a bit of a general discussion. We haven't really got down to the real sort of nitty gritty of the training. We've been kind of almost like skirting around the subject, but the topics that we've got planned, certainly we are going to be doing 2 dedicated sessions on hangboarding. They're coming up next. We made the decision of splitting them. So there's one for beginners, and then the next one will be or sort of beginner to low intermediate level. And then there'll be one that's like sort of higher intermediate to advanced level. And, we'll be going into some more detail on the training, which is, some of you may have listened to this discussion and thought, oh, crumbs, we don't really know what to do. Well, hopefully that's coming up. So thanks again. Good luck to all of you out there with your training, and we will see you very soon. Stay tuned.